myself more than anyone. And I got love for the genuine. Anyone, genuine. I love myself more than anyone. Many one brown, many one black. They left the sequence on walls to get back. The message for years I've been lost in the crack.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our Self-Love Fridays. We know it's been about a month since we last spoke, but we know that the love is still here because we are still here. So we're so grateful that you've taken this time to just connect with us on this evening. This session is only going to be about 60 minutes. And we are going to make sure that this is available to everyone on our All Things Jeanius YouTube channel. So please make sure that you subscribe and turn on the notifications so you'll be aware when this pops up and that you can share it with those who did not get a chance to be with us here tonight. So my name is Dr. Jeanius. I also go by Elisa Jean. And I have the privilege of welcoming Matt Jeanius, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. And his work alongside with mine has allowed us to do wellness activities for communities, schools, churches. And we are just so blessed to share the story of our family with you, but also to share wellness and love, because that's what we are all about. Jeanius Consulting is here to nourish the mind. And so we are here to spread that love, spread that nourishment so that our community can be edified. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Matt Jeanius.
Thank you, man. I feel like sometimes we go too formal. I know you, you know me, So sometimes we just have to just, let that familiarity come out. Like I really appreciate you on so many levels, not because you're just a great wife, but you're a great partner. You're a great friend, you're a great mother, you're all of the above. I can't say too much about how much I appreciate you, And so I just want to start by saying I'm grateful. I'm in a grateful spirit. This week it was a rough week, weather, so many things happening. And self-care has to be one of those things that and one of these weeks we have to prioritize, And so one of those areas that I know we said we'll circle back to is parenting. And so today, Elisa and I, we're gonna be going back and forth on some of these ideas that we've been working through in our understanding of self-care and parenting, and why is that really, really important, And so even before we start, even before we really get into this, I want to take this time to pull you guys in a little closer by, whenever you get a chance to view this, if you're viewing it live right now, or if you're listening to it live right now, just think about how you want to feel at the end of this transaction. Sometimes we go into things just, wanting to just get out what we can get out, but you have to decide what you want to get out of this presentation, of this transaction right now. Meaning, I know what I want to feel, and I'm already feeling it because this is what I pre-planned to feel, giving this and receiving the exchange from you guys as well. I want to feel grateful. I want to feel accomplished. I want to feel connected. I want to feel loved. I want to feel protected. I want to feel safe. I want to feel engaged. And so that's what I'm going in with. When I leave this space, that's what I want to feel. And I'm feeling it already. So I brought what I want to feel to the table. And so for you, wherever you are, however, this presentation reaches you, think about how you want to feel at the end of this Self-Love Friday, specifically talking about parenting, And so think about that, embody that feeling, and let's go on this journey together, right? The best parents, that's
Yes.
the DJ Khaled thing, right?
Jay Khaled.
we the best. He just says we the best. And so it's something to already claim that you're the best, because the version that you are right now is the best version that is available right now until you tap into that next, higher self that's available to you. And so we have to be grateful for where we are right now and make sure that we are loving where we are right now and being okay with where we are right now. Right now, you are a great parent. Right now, you are an excellent parent, and it's not an easy journey. Of course, my wife and I, we're not pros, but we're close to it. We're not pros, but we're close to it. So And we're going to, share with you guys some of the things that we've learned on our journey, some of the things we've learned professionally, because my wife is an educator of 15 years, 16 years, 7, I don't even know now, And so we're going to share some of these things together. So let's get into this. One of the first things is this quote right here that I found from Maya Angelou. And sometimes with these quotes, if you don't know where it comes from, sometimes it just loses its context. But I feel like if you just read a few words of Maya Angelou, you will always figure out the essence of it, because it's so richly packed, And so I want you to read this for us, love, and then we will kind of talk about this a little bit.
I want to thrive as a parent. I don't want to just survive through it. I look for ways to make it fun, and I look for ways to enjoy it. Maya Angelou.
Right. Beautiful quote, right? Now, did we know this at the start of parenting, that this was an option to actually go through parenting and thriving in it and having fun with it? Did we see this from our parents? Did we see them really engaging and thriving in the aspect that's specific to parenting? And I don't know if I can say yes, that I knew this before, or this was an idea that I can embody in our parenting, or I can't say that I actually seen this lived and real experiences with my parents. So let me hear from you. What does this quote, how does this quote kind of shake things up inside of you?
Yeah, for me personally, I know that this is a concept that I think only through my own personal development that I could come to this point of thinking that this was even possible. I just thought parenting was something you just do. I didn't think that you could necessarily, like, as long as they're alive and they go to college, and you see this all the time on TV. If they're not on drugs, they're not doing, like they would list off all the things, the bad things that could
If they're
possibly
not doing
happen.
those things, right?
Right. And they're like, as long as I don't do any of those things, then I've done it. Right. But I love that she put thrive, as her way of describing how she wants to feel as a parent, because I know for me personally, my parents were doing what they knew to do, and they both lived from they both lived from what they were given, basically. And they're of no fault of their own, they did their best, and I think they did amazing. But of course, once I became of age, I had to realize that, hey, even though they did their best, I can choose to do a little bit better. I can choose to learn from where they were at, and craft it into the way that I want it to be for my kids. Right.
It felt like our parents survived us, like once you read the sentence, it felt like they survived. They were like, woo,
Yeah.
they made it, And I remember vividly feeling that way, when Amelia turned 1, when our first daughter turned 1 year. So we like, woo, we did it. We made it a year, because I promise you, leaving that hospital, we felt so ill-equipped, They
remember they made us watch that video. They made us watch this video.
A VHS, and we were watching this thing like, what is happening? And so I think when you look at the surviving part, and you say, how do you survive parenting? Yeah, you look at the things that your kids, could have done, and you're grateful for the things they, and it's the focus is on the kids, basically.
Right.
When you think about thriving as, then whatever that thing is, then you're at another level. It's easy to see us thriving as, let's say, a student, right? How would you were an educator, how did a student show up to your class and perform so you can understand that they're thriving?
Ooh, and I don't think that was the experience necessary, because that wasn't the focus.
Right.
The focus when I was teaching was more so about performance, and making sure that you got the good grades, and you were recognized by certain associations and all that kind of stuff. So thriving, I think this generation has a better chance of us kind of visualizing and seeing it, because of the pandemic, and now everyone paying attention to these mental health issues, and seeing how the separation affected students, and that for a well-rounded student, they need to have an emotional intelligence, they need to have support mentally. So this is great for this coming generation, because now it's in the forefront of everyone's minds that mental health is important, and mental health is the key to allowing you to thrive.
Yeah, see, now you're getting ahead of us, right? So I wanted to make sure we understood in any context, what would it look like for any of us to thrive? What is the easiest space that we can see ourselves thriving in, right? It's not parenting, it's not education, because you just debunked that, So where is that area in our lives that we can say that we're thriving in? A known area that we all
Wow.
say that we're thriving in this, Is there one area that we know specifically that you can just come to the top of your, you know what, man, back in my day, like we were, like what can you really look at in your cycle to think about an area that you were thriving? I think you were thriving as a student. That's why I
Wow, you
said
think
it.
so? That's
I
what you think?
listen. At least, listen. You graduated top of your class, elementary. So in from the outside looking in, as a student, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a student, you were thriving,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then that's just linear. That's just one area, right?
And on metrics, and that's based
Right.
on performance and measurable.
Exactly. Right. And so on that standard, you can see where thriving resides. I think for us, we have to take this right here, the thriving portion of our understanding, and apply it to all the other areas, not just parenting, And so that's why, like, when my mind was spinning around how I wanted to come and have this conversation, I thought about all life cycles, right? All of life cycles, every single aspect of life cycles. And it all finds its way back around, And there's so many different cycles of life that sometimes we can get overwhelmed just thinking about how they intertwine with each other, how they interact with each other. But it's important for us to know, because where is the thriving? Where is the thriving? Where, what do we bring about that will allow us to see that we're thriving in these areas? For example, easy example, right? The human life cycle. You remember seeing that? One of the first images I saw in undergrad in psychology, and one of the child development books, is you see the human life cycle from a baby to the infant. You see all of this, and
That's it.
then you see the going up, and you see the old person, and you see the grave right there at the end, right? And you see that, and they tell you a little bit about each time period and what it will come with. But you know what doesn't come with that? Instructions on how you thrive, Instructions on how you thrive. Of course, if you can liken, what we would say as thriving, let's say as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? But that don't tell you how to do that. It just shows you some of the things that are important in your human life cycle to develop into mentally, physically, emotionally, that will allow you to show up as your best,
Right.
But we still can't find where is it that, how do we create a pattern of still thriving in here? And you alluded to it. You alluded to the mental, the emotional, and of course, we're talking about self-care. We'll get back to that. Child development, right? So this is happening within here, right? This right here is happening within here. So now you have the overlap of the human life cycle, child development cycle, right? And then you have the family life cycle, right? And you have a relationship life cycle, and you have a parenting life cycle, which is something that I think people have not looked at yet. And I'm going to spend just maybe like 5 minutes in that one, to kind of open that up again. And what I really want us to have some time diving into is the self-care life cycle that overlaps and intertwine with all of these, which creates what we were looking for, thriving. When you have self-care plus any aspect of your life, you thrive. If you're a principal, but you include self-care in it, you're thriving. If you're a teacher and you include self-care in it, thriving. Parent, relationship, child, you create self-care or some type of modality of nourishment, or not nourishment. I'm talking about nurturing, a nurturing environment specifically for the child development. You know, if we can find a nurturing environment, then that is the care that we need for them to develop in a healthy way. So before I get ahead of myself, because I felt like I was doing that, let me ask you about the child development portion, because you're an educator. Tell me where in this, right, cycle, I wish I would have pulled up the graphics, but it was, as you can see, it's a lot of graphics and I don't want to get graphic heavy, but think about the child development cycle and where in it, right, do we learn, or how do we implement a self-care regimen in here that would include everyone? So what does that look like for you in your mind as an educator?
Right. So for child development, when we're taught or through the curriculum and the research, they outline these times, right? So from birth to from the womb to about 7 or 8 years old,
Right.
it's essentially the downloading time, right?
Yes.
So basically the child is just soaking up all of the information or what's around them. So every conversation, every song, every outing, anything that the child experiences in these first few years are setting the stage for their mental and perception awareness, their reality
Right.
of what life is like.
Right.
And that is the time when we are to be modeling. You see how you said the self-care plus anything else?
Right.
So when the child is downloading these things that are basically setting up the stage for their subconscious mind, right? Setting up the stage, because we understand that the subconscious mind is 95% of our brain and our conscious mind is really 5% of our brain. So the reason why the subconscious mind is so big is because it's that first period of acquiring all of the information we're ever gonna know.
Right.
So it's a beautiful stage. It's a
Right.
wonderful stage. And that's why, as we're parents, right, and we're learning this as child development, it's so important for us to do this self-care, this
Right.
work on ourselves as our kids are developing, because they are downloading these things at the same time. I'm sorry if I'm going ahead of time.
No. This is good,
Okay.
because what I wanted to do is use this example as a mirror, right? As you describe that developmental stage, those developmental stages, you know, and they could even be broken down in the smaller portions. What you get a chance to see is that these are pivotal years for the child, right? 0 to 7, 0 to 8, very important years because of the formative years of their brain, you know. There's also studies like ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experience, that talk about if there's trauma. You know, we know all of what could happen if something bad goes wrong.
Right.
Right? We've done all those studies that tells you this is what happens when something bad goes wrong. I think our focal should be on what environment do we need to have for the best outcomes to come out, and then make those the areas of us, you know, contributing to, adding value to, speaking about, making sure that we make known to the parents before they become parents and so forth. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up again is because, listen, we are parents, right? You can hear the kids in the background right now, right? So the part that I wanted you to focus on is what is happening in our lives as our kids are 0 to 7. What is happening in our lives simultaneously, right? What is happening in our relationship, in our family life? You know, what is happening in our relational life? What is happening in these other areas, you know? And so if we're not paying attention to how sometimes one cycle can definitely be impacted by the health of another cycle, right? If we're not maintaining it, okay, like one of the examples that I know for sure will create some awareness is that there is this article that's out called the Ghost in the Nursery. Right? The Ghost in the Nursery talks about the life cycle of parents who were parented by a parent that was unhealthy, meaning that parent was, you know, was responsible for creating some level of trauma in that child's life, who is now a parent, right? And so now that new parent is creating trauma based on that old parent ghost still being present, right? So one family life cycle, right, is impacted. The human life cycle is impacted, and now the child developmental cycle is impacted as well. You see what I'm talking about, right? So the grandparents who created the trauma the child that received the trauma, now the grandchild is the recipient of the trauma based on something being missing. What was that element that was missing in that grandparent's life that can get them to be stable enough to give the child what they needed in order to get that child stable enough so that when they have their children, to be able to create, the relationship necessary for that kid to thrive in, And so you mentioned, all of the important parts of what's happening here, right? If the parent is not aligned with where that child is, right? And so what I mean by that, you said 0 to 7. I would like to think 0 to 4 first, 0 to 4, 0, before 0 to 3, whatever, right? 0 to 4.
Or they enter school.
Before they enter school, right? I would say that's more of the parental life cycle that is based on nurturing, right? Based on nurturing. So we need to be the best nurturers for those years for our children, right? But how do we become the best nursery for our kids when we're not healthy?
Wow.
So I can't be the nursery my child needs if I'm not including my self-care in this parental life cycle. In that time frame, 0 to 4, they need a nursery. They need a space where they can, be protected, feel loved and secured, and and that's from everyone around them. So if that vibration isn't a vibration of self-love and self-care, and it's not coming from, so there's so many different things that's impacting this age development, this time period, that we're sometimes not aware of, because this is just like, we're dialing it in, I'm tired today, but I'm going to do it anyway, And so you have resentment that comes up. Then you have postpartum that's still a part of that. Then you have relationship issues that are impacted by the child's development. You have lack of intimacy that's all over the place in the relationship. So you have all these things that are clashing. And then what if you have kids from multiple age? So now you have different ages and stages in here, right? You have different human life cycles. Then you have you have so many things going on. This has to be the priority for you so that we can show up in this area as our healthiest selves, right?
Right.
Now, I said a lot. Let me get some from you, and then I'll kind of add a little bit more to it.
Okay. I noticed something when we think about, let's just say when we first become parents, right? It's almost as if we go back into this subconscious, like unaware state, because it's new for us, right? So it's like we're back in this like
starting over
phase, and because we're not aware, right? And we're not aware, we literally let the program that we got from when we were a child run, and we don't, and then we're like, I don't understand why my kid is acting this way, right? And we're just unaware because we're in that time where we're not conscious, we're not using our conscious brain anymore. We're, like you said, dialing it in. We're just letting the program play. I saw my parents do this, so I'm going to do it too. And sometimes we do the opposite. Sometimes we have a hard stop in our head. We're like, yeah, my parents did that. I'm definitely not going to do that. So then the pendulum swings the opposite way. So it's not necessarily that we're making choices, like you said, based on self-care. We're just making choices based on what it was that we liked or what we didn't like from our parents. So this is so deep as far as just the different cycles and how they kind of like are transposed in between, because that's why time is such an interesting thing, because we are always kind of like in flux in these different areas in our lives. And we're either, if we don't develop, like you said, if we didn't figure out how to thrive, then we're still stuck in some places in our lives at a younger, phase, and a more immature phase. I see thriving as maturity. I see thriving as, like when you said Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as self-actualization. Now you're at a point where you're recognizing that, oh, I had a program, but I don't have to use that same program. I can do something different that actually makes me feel good on the inside. I don't have to yell at my kids. I could actually stop and take a deep breath and and see this in a different way. I don't, like you literally can put a finger on it. Like you can tell what's happening. That's maturity, that's awareness, that's consciousness.
Man, that's good, because you're pulling out different aspects that I think without having the back and forth, sometimes I could miss. And I think it's good that you can highlight those pieces that kind of shows the connection between where we are in our parent life cycle, where we are in our relationship life cycle, family life cycle, and how all of them. And I'm glad that you brought your hands out to show, because it's visual. We can't see that. And the beauty of it is that when we do see it, we were able to manipulate it somehow, and then we can actually move things around, right? And then push the family life cycle this way and that's that way, and see where they really overlap and how they come together. And so we will be able to do that collectively. I want to use your brain and other people's brain for the next phase of this, because we're developing something that looks and feel different that we can share on for the next generation to approach these cycles differently, right? Here's something that you don't hear a lot of conversation about: a parent of a teenager and a toddler, right? Sometimes our parents of teenagers and toddlers parent the teenager like the toddler, or the toddler like the teenager, because they don't see that they have to be different types of parents in the development of that child. You can't be the same parent you are to a teenager to a toddler, and vice versa. So you have to learn what type of parent you need to be. But regardless if you're parenting the teenager or the toddler, you have to have that self-care in there.
That's right. And can I add this?
Sure.
A lot of what we are given, and this is just bringing in African-centered perspective on this. A lot of what we were given about what these life cycles should look like, I think we should throw away.
Right.
I think we should throw them away.
Right.
I think their studies and what they were able to come up with, their advancements, is good for them, but we have some African principles. We have some things that have been passed down from elders and generations that are spiritual truths, that we don't have to say that, oh, when they turn a teenager, they're going to be combative. No, not every teenager is combative, or, I hate you, mom, or, like all of these stereotypical things that we are placed with on the media, the historical, white supremacist perspective on these cycles. So this is a beautiful time too, like you said, as we're redefining what all these things look like and how they overlap, is that we're also redefining the cycles and what they can, the future of what they can be.
Yes, and that's part of the reason why that visual aspect of it is difficult, because one, it's hard to find visuals that represent us. Most of the visuals have white people in the family life cycle, child development.
They do.
White, this is white, and so sometimes it's just hard to create an understanding of what our life cycles look like, and should feel like. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because you're right. It's not something that we take on wholly, right? It can give you an idea, but to adopt it as truth, like I was talking about personality, different types of personality, and how sometimes we say, this is who I am, as if you have no space to change, And so sometimes when we learn these life cycles, we believe that our kids will be at a specific space at a specific time. And then we become, what type of parent we think that child would need, and therefore creating the space where that can become a possibility. So you're absolutely right. So let me run on for a second and point out how some of them overlap again, right? So you have the child development, cycle, where I was saying 0 to 4, we need that nurturing parent, right? From 5 to 11 for me, 5 to 11 for me, for me, 5 to 10 maybe, is where you have the opportunity to educate now, not the school system type of education, the education that you want to lock into your mind. How do you educate a child? You teach them how to live. You teach them how to thrive, right? You teach them how to not just survive, but surpass that mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Those are the years where the actual time, as far as the attention they will give you, will be there for you to pour into them. For those who have young preteens, they're like, I'm good. I'm trying to go that way. So the educational years, meaning the things that we want to put into our kids' brains, morals, standard values. Of course, it starts from zero, but these are the years where you really have to be intentional in what you're putting in them. So you become a parent / educator, but not the educator in a sense of, A, B, C, D. You're talking about emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, financial, relational, social.
Modeling.
Yes, and so those are the things that you have to now put the investment into to make sure that they're seeing these things, and so from 0 to 4, you need parent / nurturer. From like 5 to like 11 to 10, you need parent / educator. Now, it doesn't mean that when that cycle starts, the educating cycle starts, that the nurturing ends.
Hmm.
It rolls over. So now you're nurturing and you're educating, but it's not like the education didn't start. This is where it highlights the most. So you will need more education. The nurturing will still cover you because you need a nurturing environment to educate, but you would need to create an educational environment where they're learning from you intentionally. They're taking notes regardless if you're paying attention or not. And so let's be intentional in these years, right?
Mhm.
Now, as an educator, I know it's different from education as a parent, but what do you need to be an effective educator, right? Think about your own mind. Think about your own body, your own spiritual connection. What do we need to be effective educators? It's going to always come back down here, self-care, self-love, and so throughout all of those stages, from the 0 to 4, the 5 to 10 / 11, maybe, you're still going to need to create a regimen of, man, I have to be more nurturing. So how do I nurture myself? I have to become an educator. So what do I know myself, or what do I have to learn more of? Like you said earlier, we're learning brand new, and each time it's different. It's
Yep.
not the same each time. So you have to learn, what type of nurturing environment does this child need from me versus this previous child? It might be different. What type of education does this child need from me versus this other child? And then in both of those cycles, you always have to stick to that understanding of, how do I then pour into myself to be the most effective parent in this? And that's just one aspect. We didn't even talk about where you are in your relationship. Sometimes people have kids, not sometimes, a lot of times people have kids and the relationship suffers, but again, I don't want to keep going.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me hear from you about the aspect of the educational parent.
Yeah, it's like that portion is really, it's really about taking that time to see yourself as a learner, right? And honoring that particular learning style.
Right.
So when we send our kids to school, we kind of do this one size fits all, right? We want them to all, sit down at the desk, do things the same, and it's like when you're that nurturer plus educator, the relationship is there, which is the baseline, that's the
Right.
foundation, right? The nurturing. And now that you are in that space, you have more access, like you said, to their attention, where you can start depositing, right? You can start showing up and depositing information in there. So when you're the person who's doing the depositing, you have to see yourself as the person who's learning as well, so that you're in a position to make sure that the parameters aren't about judgment, right? About like, oh, you're doing a good job, or or you're failing, or you're putting all these different kind of things in place about what it means to be a learner based on these kind of like really rigid ideas of what it means to be an educator, or to teach things, right? It's really about common sense. As an educator, it's really about teaching common sense and showing yourself grace, showing yourself that, hey, I like to learn by drawing. And I was telling you the other day, rewriting my notes was one of my things of how I like to learn, right? And then if I'm noticing that for me, how does my child like to learn? right? And so instead of it being about how I'm educating them, it's about how they're educating me so that I can put those deposits in
Back into
the way
them.
that they're going to get it the best,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I like that. It is both, it is both deciding what it is that we want to leave with them, but also making sure we're paying attention to what they want to gain from us. Because sometimes those two don't match. Sometimes we want to make sure that they know this thing and they're like, I'm not interested in that at all, and so the self-care portion is, like you said, be kind to yourself because you are new to this as well, and it doesn't matter if you are a vet, if you already parented this new child is a different child. So we have to learn how to be an individual educator. What you call it? You have to have those
IEPs.
You gotta have IEPs for your kids, I remember this vividly, when the triplets came here and I was interacting with them so much that I realized that I can't be the same person for them.
No.
I'm like, man, they really are pulling and stretching me all types of ways. This one wants to get on my back. This one wants to go jogging. This one wants to go chase an insect. This one wants to do that. I'm like, can't we just do the same things, And it's no, all of them are different. So we have to make sure, like you said, we're listening to what it is that they desire by creating that intimacy and that nurturing environment. That's the environment we learn in as well.
That's right.
So the self-care is how do I learn, but also how do I teach,
Yes.
right? How do I receive, but also how do I give, And so what will allow me to do these things my best? That's what self-care is about, producing that best self, Really quick, the last two that I'll go over, and then we'll go into the idea of how we're going to bring this all together. The last two is in the child life cycle for me, and I'm going to break them down next time. But the next one is the teenage years, which is one of my favorite times because that's the years that where they forecast a lot of activity, the rebellious years. I hate you, mom, closing the door in your face and stuff like that. And it doesn't have to be that way, at least to the understanding that we have, it doesn't have to be that way. That's just one way of looking at it and then interacting with it with that thing in mind. So we bring forth that which we think about. So another way of thinking about it is that you've already nurtured, right? We've done a great job nurturing. We've done a great job educating. Now we have to put them through their own rite of passage. That's the preteen to teenage years. They are now being coached to see how effective their learning has been. This is where we do the most correctives because this is where the trial and error really begins to see if they are ready to now leave the nest. And that age is different. Countries people leave early as 12, 13. Some people leave 18, 19, 20, other 36, 37. You feel me? So, so the point is that time period needs you to be a different type of parent. You need to be a parent / coach. A coach doesn't get in the game with the kid. Sometimes when you see parents overcorrecting, like around this age, when you see a parent trying to wipe a kid's mouth and the kid is like, get away from me, don't touch me, or, trying to fix their hair and they're brushing them away. It's because you're trying to pull in too much of another cycle into a cycle that's not where the child is. So we're trying to educate in the coaching stage, and the kid is like, I'm done being educated. I just want to be coached. I want to show you that I got this. I can get in there and give everything that you put into me back. And so we have to be aware of the things that, like you said, they wanted to learn, that these are the things that we fostered, but also some of the lessons that we wanted them to learn, some of the moral standards and values that we wanted them to have, and then see how they are interacting and using these things in real time. And then the success and mistake, we do the correctives by making sure they understand that this is only a trial period.
Right.
Now, the good part, where do we need to be as a parent to be a great coach? Where do we need to be mentally, physically, emotionally? All those areas of intimacy we talked about in the self-care lessons. Where do we need to be the best version of a parent / coach?
Where do we need to be?
Right.
We need to be coachable.
Right. So, okay. True. Because like it kind of mirrors it, but I think a part of it is knowing that the mistakes will be made from the parent. Coaches don't do their jobs perfectly, and the players don't act out the plays perfectly as well. But perfect practice, what they say, perfect practice make perfect execution, whatever. But we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for growth,
Yes.
And so a good coach will always measure growth versus the lack. I see you working on this area. How can we help improve this area? So you focus on the growth, but it's the same thing with you. Like, man, I really try to, get in there and get in the game with the child rather than letting them do it themselves. And I kind of sabotage them from actually finding their own bearings as a child is learning how to walk. And so we have to be careful not to get in the game, right? But that takes a mindset. Sometimes it's just like, you know what? Let me just do this, because you don't know
Right.
what you're doing. Then we just get yourself out of there. Let me, and so that goes back to this, like, where are you?
Right.
Make sure that you're aligning with what that child needs to be that effective parent. Last one, and then we're gonna go to the next slide. So I want to get this one in there. The last one is after they've left, let's say 17, 18, sometimes kids leave earlier. Like we said, 17, 18, when they've left, you need to be a parent/friend, right? Meaning the nurturing, that's gone, right? That's primarily gone. Educating, they're out the house now, so there's not a lot of educating you can do. Coaching, minimal, you can do some coaching, but it's very light. You need to approach it as a friendship, a relationship where trust is there. Name a good friendship: trust, transparency, honesty, reliability, open communication. They know that you have their back. You're still wearing a parent umbrella, but it comes off differently. If you learn what you need to be those things and those areas based on you taking care of you, so you can graduate each cycle of your own self, whether it's in the family, relationship, human, if you know what is necessary at each level for you, then you go in with an advantage, and I know we kind of pushed all of that together, but let me hear your thoughts, and then I'm going to go to the next slide.
Oh, this is beautiful. I think it's rich. I think each one, like you said, this is a great overview for us to consider, because each one can be pulled out a little bit further, and I love the summary of using child development and those stages in life and how that would interact with you as a parent, being that nursery, that nurturer, into that educator, into that coach, and transitioning to that friend, right? And I think it's a beautiful spread of a strategy that we know when we were coming in, we weren't given, the opportunity to kind of like really pull this apart. And I think this is very valuable for parents.
Yeah, because like you said earlier, a lot is said in those studies about where we should be, our personalities, where our kids should be, where our families will be, and all these other things. But have we decided where we would like to be?
Right.
Like, can you just see it and be like, no, that's not for me. I'm going to choose to relate to myself, my relationship, my children, my family in another way, and then go towards that successfully. Now, this is the fun part for me. The new idea, right? The new idea is, as you can see, hands coming together, conversations happening, light bulb. The new idea is, how do we go from this, right, to something brand new, right? Like, and you brought your hands together earlier, and so this would be our assignment, and anybody who would like to take on this challenge, right? I would like for us to start thinking about how can we interweave, right, these things together to where you can find at each point of those cycles where you're going to be, where you want to be, and what you want to feel. You can
That's right.
pinpoint in my relationship, as a parent, as a parent to a child, a toddler, this is what I want to feel, in my own development as a father to a teenager, this is what I want to feel, and how do we create something that is like something that you can actually move around, like manipulate. I'm thinking like 3D.
Yeah.
Spin this thing around and like see, okay, and then turn it around and put it on the side, and really get a chance to open up the idea that all of these parts are moving simultaneously. And if we're not careful, we're just that one moot point that's just going through it, you know.
Right.
Where you at? I'm right here, man. I'm surviving, getting through it, you know.
This would be a great like journaling or workbook activity.
Yeah. So this is, like I said, development. The new idea is we have to develop it. You know, we have to develop this to make it make sense to people so that they can see that there are choices that we can choose from.
Right.
You know, I don't gotta be my parents, you know, and I don't have to be that parent that, and this is like, I'm talking to myself now. I don't have to be that parent that because of where I am in the day, right, my kids can't enjoy cake.
Right.
You know, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. So that's it. That's all we have for today. You know, the new idea, really developing a way to, you know, appreciate and kind of bring these cycles together to create something brand new. You know, something.
Yeah, I can envision us making something really nice to kind of help, just kind of like the inventory that you did, the intimacy inventory, something kind of like this to flesh this out. And I think it would be very helpful.
Right. You know, and, you know, and that's it. You know, I wanted to share this. This was the idea that was brewing in my mind to make sure that our parents that are out there feel loved, you know, and feel like they have the attention that they need by giving it to themselves, not waiting for anybody to celebrate, to acknowledge, to affirm. Listen, right where you are great. You know, you are loved, you are amazing. And if you have the desire to get better, this is where you get in contact with us, you know? So you get in contact with us through a variety of different ways, of course, through, you know, through our social media. My social media is Matt Jeanius or at Beachstone Counseling. Together, we're at Jeanius Consulting. And as, you know, what's going to be great, as the video plays, you're going to put all of those links, ching, ching, ching. So they're going to come flying in so that people can see them and actually utilize them. And so get in contact with us at Jeanius Consulting. You know, we love to do this workshop and other workshops for your schools, for your churches, for your communities, for your businesses, and so forth, to develop the idea of where self-care lives at in every aspect of our lives: parenting, child development, relationship, and so on and so forth. So
I love myself more than anyone, and I got love for the genuine. Anyone, genuine. I love myself more than anyone. Many one brown, many one black. They left the sequence on walls to get back. The message for years I've been lost in the cracks.